Hello and welcome again to Retirement Living Associates and our podcast that we have kicked off. And we're thrilled today to be with Secretary Elaine Marshall with the Secretary of State's office here in North Carolina. Certainly has been on this job and in this role for a long time. So thank you so much for taking the time with us today. I want to read a brief introduction. You're welcome to add to it or help me out with that. But Madam Secretary was born in Maryland. In 1996, became Secretary of State, the first woman ever elected to a statewide executive branch office in North Carolina. Secretary Marshall was a member of the North Carolina State Senate before rising to statewide office. She holds a BS in Home Economics from the University of Maryland and a law degree from Campbell University. She's received honorary doctorate degrees from Campbell University, Lees-McRae College, Meredith College, and the Republic of Moldova University. Her work experiences include teaching home economics in the public school and community college systems. She's then went into small business for a while and into the private practice of law. Secretary Marshall has been very active in many civic groups in the areas of child welfare, women's issues, and agricultural and small town economic development. There's a long list of accolades, Phi Kappa Phi, and on. So I'm not going to read all those today, but certainly an impressive list. What we want to talk about first is securities and fraud. And I know your department and office does a great deal with that. Specifically, we try to focus on the retirement industry aspect of that and how it affects our retirement folks of North Carolina. So if you could just take that and run with that a little bit, maybe give some advice and some issues you've had, specifically with securities related issues.
Well, it is no secret that seniors, people in their retirement years, are a target for crooks. You know, we had Bernie Madoff here. He's probably the most famous North Carolina citizen, but he is not the first, nor will he be the last people trying to scam others. In his case, it was a Ponzi scheme. We see scam artists, and artists I use not to demean real artists, but you know, they're very good at what they do, which is why they're called scam artists. People as they age perhaps do become vulnerable, and they become vulnerable for a number of different issues. Sometimes it's just loneliness. Seniors that are less active and maybe isolated due to mobility issues, transportation issues, whatever it might be. The ones sitting at home wishing their kids would call them more often.
Yes, I was going to mention when the phone rings, that's good.
That kind of thing,
Yes.
They are eager to have contact with others. And if they're truly lonely, that is just a real opportunity for a crook to take advantage of them. You know, I had something recently that was a wrong number, texting. It was just, you know, I asked who was this, and they gave me a first name. They just said hello. And then they wanted to go into more of a conversation, and I didn't respond. Anytime you respond, that's encouragement to them. So sometimes it starts out with calls to the house, wrong numbers. It could be, as seniors become more and more internet savvy, it's a wide world of things that come across that unfortunately are appealing to them, that they open up that they shouldn't. And you know, with this hunger for relationships with other people is bait, if you will, to continue. You know, there are a lot of cases of romance crimes where somebody is
I read that.
You know, trying
courted,
yes. Develop a relationship, and then sometimes they need money, and money gets sent, and or a promise to come and marry. Those kinds of things.
Or sad stories that some of the retirement communities I manage, we see people run into this nice young man or nice lady said they needed my help, and they're very susceptible to that because they're kind-hearted.
Yeah, North Carolinians are very courteous. We ought to just hang up the phone with a loud slam sometimes on some of these things. We have a saying around here, check before you write one, and it ought to be expanded, you know, check before you give. You know, the art of developing somebody's trust is well sophisticated in the criminal element world. With limited time, limited quantity. These are things not based upon the romantic relationship, but an urgency is created and talk about opportunity. We just need your investment to make this whole big thing happen, and it's going to be marvelous. All of that stuff is just bunk. It is just inducement for folks to open up their pocketbooks. And seniors sometimes are, as inflation goes on, having a difficult time with their fixed income. So that's another way that they become vulnerable if they're not sure about making ends meet and having, having resources to support themselves.
Yes.
That also creates a fear of what's going to happen to me, later on.
Sure.
And
Sure.
the statistics are that we just don't know how much dollar-wise goes on because a lot of this stuff goes unreported.
Well, I was getting ready to ask you, what is your sort of official answer on where and how it should be reported? Because one thing I know we run into managing communities is some people are so embarrassed by the time they
Correct.
realize that it's fake, they
Right.
really don't want to tell people
They don't want to
because
tell
then they
people.
know they were an easy target and they don't
sure
like
don't
that.
want to tell their families
No, that's exactly right.
because
So
limiting their ability to reach their resources
That's
then
right,
becomes a
right.
fear for them.
right.
We are the place where folks should complain about securities. Now, investment scams. We do a lot of activities that we nominally call scam jams.
Oh,
That is a coordination between the Department of Insurance, the Attorney General's Department, usually local law enforcement, and maybe even postal inspectors, because they're our greatest ally in some of this stuff. But what we tell people at this is that there's no wrong door with the three government agencies that are there together. We make sure that if something comes in here to this Secretary of State's office and say it's a telephone bill scam, or maybe it's an aluminum siding scam, that goes to the Attorney General. But we transfer those. So people don't need to hesitate because they're not sure which one of those three agencies. Or if it happens to be an insurance type fraud, then we refer that to the insurance office. And we work closely with these agencies.
sure,
So,
sure. And there must be a fine line or a crossover between it's a securities scam and it's fraud, because I know we've even had some examples in my experience where someone has formed a relationship with someone, and that person may even call them and ask for something like a gift for the storm we recently had in Western North Carolina. And it's not securities, but they think of it as building this ongoing relationship that's
right.
been tragic.
And we have jurisdiction there for us.
Yes.
Security for
Fraud.
charity fraud. But again, all of us that are in this business welcome the calls from individuals. Now, we do need help if you're going to call us. We need somebody to take a screenshot off their phone or their computer, get the number that they called from. Now, these numbers may not be the real number, but we do need that information.
Sure.
As much information as can be obtained possibly is helpful. Now, if it's somebody's trying to sell you an investment opportunity, we would really like them to go to the Secretary of State website, which is sosnc.gov.
Okay.
sosnc.gov, real simple.
Yes.
And there under securities, they can find an investor checklist. These are questions that you ought to be asking this person. Number one, you shouldn't be making any impulse decisions. If they think it says it's going to go away today, just put down the phone and run. If limited quantity about to give out, it sounds like the pots and pans they're selling on TV.
Yes.
You shouldn't let that pressure build up on you.
Yes.
But this checklist is the things you ought to ask, like, is it registered? Because a security has to be registered with us. There are a few exceptions, but not very many. And the person selling it has to be registered. And I can give you some sad tales of seniors that were injured because of calls like that were not made. Because if the answer to either one of those is no, then it's a rogue activity, and you don't need to be putting your money in it. But this checklist, you get the answers, and then you need a check behind them. Check before you write one. Again,
Yes,
that goes
Good
back to
phrase,
that
yes.
saying, yeah. And if somebody says it's guaranteed, hang up the phone.
Yeah, there's no such a thing.
There are no guarantees in this business.
That's right.
If there's a guarantee interest payout, then your principal diminishes. So people kind of need to understand that. We have a securities newsletter which periodically goes out and explains in ordinary language these different types of investment phrases that you hear out there, like exchange traded funds, those kinds of things. We do an explanation of that to people in plain English. I tell people that if you can't figure out how this activity is going to make a profit, don't invest in it.
Right.
Again, if they say it's guaranteed, that is absolutely not true. Trusting somebody if you don't understand it is one of the biggest mistakes that folks could make. But this checklist, you can write in there and get everything that they say, you write it down. And even if you have an existing relationship with a stockbroker and you're happy about that, you still need to do this because it reminds you of what questions you need to ask, because you have a trust relationship with that broker or else you wouldn't have them. But even though it's been successful in the past, you need to make sure that something you won't know this, but sometimes there are regular registered brokers who've been good, but something happens in their life, either a marriage or some alcohol issue or other dependency issue, and they have a need for cash and they've been mismanaging things and what have you.
And they know the right ones to call.
They know the right ones to call. So this would be a place where we would put down the answers. One of the key things for seniors is, how does this meet my economic pathway for the future? I've seen seniors 85-year-old people put into something that had a penalty for withdrawal short of 15 years.
Right.
That's not an appropriate investment for them. That's
what kind of scale have you seen? I know in my experience, we recently had the highest one I've ever seen, where it went from normally thousands to even hundreds of thousands, and now we've got one that's multiples of that. So I'm just curious, in your experience, I'm sure you've seen the whole range. But
well, I don't really see all of the complaints that come in here, but I'm aware of some that are over $500,000 or $1 million. And doctors get scammed, lawyers get scammed, architects get scammed. They're probably the leaders in the most embarrassed group when it happens to them, because standing in the community has been established based upon their knowledge in a certain area. Unfortunately, some of these professionals don't have the time to ask the right questions, or they don't think they do. I would hope all retirees would take the time to.
Yes, that's a good phrase. They don't think they have the time. Writes a whole book on itself, but that's good.
I can tell you many terrible tales. I'll just pick out one. A county board of education allowed somebody to come into a school system, and several places did, for teachers that were within 3 or 4 years before retirement, talking to them about stuff. One telephone call by anybody involved in that. Unfortunately, when the county allowed it, that cloaked that person in some credibility.
Proved,
Would have found that we denied this person a license to sell in North Carolina.
Wow.
Because this person had a license in Virginia that was revoked. This person was also convicted in Virginia, but was not yet sentenced because they were giving evidence against somebody else who was going to be tried later on. And they came to North Carolina and they defrauded any number of teachers out of a lot of money. And it wasn't all the teachers' fault. They were duped in, but in some cases he cut and pasted signature lines. So he was entrusted with personal information that he misused to further perpetrate the crime.
And it certainly added to it. If I'm a teacher and I think my county is endorsing
this person.
Right, I hate the word endorse, but yes.
They did, but they cloaked him with that kind of thing. We had many teachers, retirees. We picked the best. I think we put on about 6 or 8 of them and got conviction on all of them.
Oh, wow.
We had others who were too devastated. We've seen people that have had strokes, and you have to attribute it to stress and what have you.
Yes.
Others, marriage issues.
We've had our sad cases.
Seriously devastating mistakes.
Absolutely. Shifting gears, not a big segue, but shifting gears a little bit. I read one of your department's articles about the Sue Sham Cancer Charity thing that you guys worked on. So are there a lot of examples of, I know we talked about securities, but I want to talk also a few minutes about the fraud related to charitable organizations and nonprofits and things that are doing the same thing of scamming, I guess.
Right. In my career, there have been about 3 or 4 major cases that we've joined in with other states because they've been almost universal. That's one of the things about security cases that we just talked about. We don't do many of them in state court. We do them in federal court because the victims are not just limited to North Carolina. In a lot of these cases with multiple investors, they're in Ohio and Virginia and what have you. And my subpoena is good in North Carolina, but a federal subpoena, people really take notice.
Oh, yeah.
And it is effective across the country. So we try to bring these cases in federal court. These that we do with other states, generally the state where the head office is located is where the jurisdiction lies, but we all try to get our victims from this state into it. There have been, in my career, 1, 2, 3, I guess, cancer organizations that have raised money, long years of raising money. The most famous one was Arizona, and millions and millions of dollars raised in the name of cancer research or help for cancer victims, and very little went to the actual cause, and the rest of it went for salaries and buildings and expensive trips and what have you, and very little.
And so many lives now are touched by cancer. We won't start into the medical world, but
They are.
but I hear the numbers are like 1 out of 3 or 4 now. It's just crazy, the connections to cancer.
Right.
So.
And people have a real sensitivity to it. They want to help. They want more and better research. And for those people that are going through it, the family, if it's the breadwinner, that's difficult. If it's the caregiver, that's, it's just very hard. And
A hard thing for us in the retirement communities, we work hard to try to caution people and spread word we get from your department and things like that. But it's hard. It's hard to convince them that you know great victim potential in certain arenas, and you need to appreciate that whether it's fraud or whether it's securities, you're a good potential victim. It's hard to say that.
I would say a rule of thumb is if it comes unsolicited on the telephone or unsolicited through your email, don't even click on it, don't do anything. The United States government has told us that whether it's scams related to disasters like our hurricanes or earthquakes or things like that, or the scams related to charities, that about 90-95% of them are fraud, they're fake, and they explained it to me that it's like whack-a-mole.
Wow.
They take them offline and then pop back up, another look to it or what have you. The same is true with online pharmacies. That's a whack-a-mole game where they're illegal pharmacies not allowed to sell registered in the United States. So, but we try to, we don't want to overwhelm people with so much information when we do these scam jams, but it's, and you're faced with the same challenge with your communities.
We are. We have 5 or 6 communities and people everywhere from, late 60s to early 100s.
Sure,
and all the range.
And that's going to be even more going on.
That's right. I kind of get a kick out of reminding people when they say, does a retirement community want to be in a multi-generational environment? My retirement communities are multi-generational, so we already have people living there in that scenario.
Yeah.
So, good. Well, I think that covers. I appreciate, I had worked hard to come up with a few questions in case you needed any prompting, but you've done a phenomenal job of telling us the examples and the situations and whatnot. So
thank you.
I appreciate you taking the time from this role in this
department. If we've got a little bit more, there is a program that we've been involved with to train medical support people to alert us. If a senior comes in and they never were worried about money before, but maybe they don't tell the doctor, but they tell the nurse that they can't get their medicine filled and all that kind of stuff.
They do that,
we try to intervene and get the right help in there and refer to us. We also have a system where banking authorities can let it be known if somebody is making abnormal withdrawals. a person that's never had a certified check in their whole lifetime comes in
Right.
and wants a great big one for $50,000 or whatever.
Well, that message is getting across because I know a lot of banks reach out to the children of our residents and say, your parent can still manage their business, pay their bills, handle their affairs, but we'd like to have you on this alert system.
Right,
So
yes.
that's a great way.
Those are all
without-
things that have evolved since I've been Secretary of
Yeah,
State, and
that's
they're all
great.
very, very positive.
And it's working.
Good.
My
Good.
resident children tell me they've heard from their bank, so that's
Good.
great.
Good, good.
All right, anything else you want to add? I'm happy to.
Well, there's so much to add. But
I know.
We've
The
talked
topic.
a little bit here, yeah. So
Good. Well, thank you very
Thank you
much.
for covering this very important topic.
Sure. Thank you very much. We're trying to get word out in our podcast of all types of things, and
We appreciate that.
and taking your time today is wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.